Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Coffee and a Column, where we are purposely bringing together our community, bringing together policymakers, bringing together folks from media, specifically to hear from Palestinian Americans whose voices have regrettably been sidelined during the most recent violence. And I think especially grateful for everyone today who is going to share specifically about the families that their own individual families. And I ask that we go ahead and start by turning it over to you, Jim.
Thanks, everybody. As Maya said, this is an expanded edition of the Coffee and Column, because we're going to talk about my column first, and then we're going to go to those who have personal firsthand experience and family in Gaza. This week's column was built on last week's column. Last week was no lessons learned. This week was lessons that should have been learned. And I have to say, with all due respect to our president, watching him today at his press conference, there were no lessons learned. And frankly, it was quite distressing to hear the stuff he was saying, and more significantly, maybe even the stuff he wasn't saying. We have taken a totally one-sided view. We've understood one humanity and ignored completely the other humanity that was at stake in this conflict. We've taken a side. We've given a carte blanche for Israel to do whatever it wants to do, and a little too late, expressing even some concern about humanitarian needs of Palestinians, when in fact we have enabled the humanitarian crisis to unfold, saying nothing about the orders to evacuate, saying nothing about the Israel cutting off power, cutting off food, cutting off supplies into Gaza, and treating Gaza as if the North could be evacuated without any comment from the U.S. was fundamentally wrong. And when I talked about the lessons that we should have learned, the first is that, quite simply, there are deep currents here that will not change no matter how many people we kill, no matter how many people the Israelis kill. The reality here is that the deep currents are that when it's over, as I say, when the tears dry and the dust settles, all we have is a lot more dead, a lot more anger, a lot more fear, a lot more trauma, and the Palestinians will still be under occupation. The Israelis will still feel emboldened in the West Bank to seize more land and evict more people. The U.S. will still not get it because we only understand one narrative. We don't understand the Palestinian narrative. And Palestinians will be in a position where, if Hamas is eliminated, whatever that means, we'll get Hamas 2.0. We went into Iraq to get rid of Saddam. What we ended up with was ISIS. We got rid of ISIS, and what we ended up with was the PMUs, the Iranian-controlled militias, literally running much of the country. Israel went into Lebanon in 1982 to get rid of the PLO and got Hezbollah. Went into Lebanon in 2006 to get rid of Hezbollah and got a stronger Hezbollah. I mean, the fact is that there is no way to eliminate a cause that is born of some root issues that have not ever been addressed. You cannot build. Remember 2 weeks ago, Jake Sullivan saying that the Middle East is calmer than it's ever been, and the talk in the media was the Palestinian issue doesn't matter anymore. Right. This is the new Middle East we're getting right now, which is actually the old Middle East. Riots against American embassies in 7, 8 countries, Middle East leaders canceling meetings with the United States, and the president speaking in a tone-deaf way about Israel's suffering, ignoring completely the fact that there are Palestinians. And so, you know, the fact is that the Israelis got themselves into a situation here, and we could have done differently. We could have said, do not do this. We didn't. Instead, we enabled it. And so we're going to reap the whirlwind, and they're going to reap the whirlwind, and the Palestinians are paying the deepest price at all. This is not to excuse what Hamas did at all. at all. What they did was brutal and stupid, murdering people who did not need to pay that price. And Palestinians don't need to pay the price either. You know, I just checked my polling. I've been using a wrong number when I said 20% of people in Gaza support Hamas. The actual number is 11%. That's what we got in our latest poll. 11% identify with Hamas. And yet the entire population is paying a price. And that is what is deplorable. That is what is deplorable. And so I'm pretty much done there, Maya. There are some resource columns in the chat that I'd like you to look at. One of them, Stephen Walt, I think is just really quite extraordinary. His analysis. He's a realist foreign policy thinker who really gets it about what the problems are, what the mistakes are. And frankly, this administration is making more mistakes than I can even count. So Maya, let me turn it over to you for the beginning of introducing some of the folks we have. Let me just say, we were at a meeting at the White House, and there were some folks who will be on this call who were there, had family in Gaza. And that's where I got the idea to do this, to enable them to tell the stories of the people that are there that are not being told in the media. Because at the end of the day, America and its media and its politicians understand Israeli humanity. We do not see Palestinian humanity at all. They are objectified or ignored. As I wrote in my book, The Invisible Victims, they just don't exist in the mind of America. These aren't real people. So the president can meet with Israelis held hostage. Why not meet with Palestinians whose families are held hostage by this brutal onslaught? Why not talk to them and have them tell their stories? But it doesn't even exist in the consciousness of politicians because they're not real.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for that context that is absolutely necessary. Turning it over now specifically to our colleagues, and I want to start with you, Bassem. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. Please.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bassem Abu-Radwan. I'm a Palestinian American. I was born in Gaza, and I lived there on and off for some time. So I'm no stranger to the situation there. Most of my childhood was marred by memories of tear gas and, bombings and shootings. And it should go without saying, but it feels like in this climate, I have to say, my family are all civilians. I'm a civilian with no ties to Hamas or any such organizations. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to say to you today, because how can I explain my existence in 3 minutes? How can I explain my family's life in 5 minutes? How can I tell you who I am? Do I say that I like to watch baseball and that I'm an American just like everybody else? What do I say? So I struggled with this a lot. And what I came up with is I shouldn't have to, humanize myself. I shouldn't have to explain that, I am a person, my family are people too. But nonetheless, this is a situation that we've been put in, is having to explain that we are human too. Palestinian Americans, human, people in Gaza are humans, and that we are worthy of living a peaceful life. My family's in Gaza right now, and every day I, hour by hour, flinch when I hear the phone ring, wondering if it's someone to call me and tell me that my entire family has been wiped off the map. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because it wouldn't be one person who killed, be all of them. My neighbors in Gaza, who we grew up with, also civilians. Again, I shouldn't have to say that, but I do. Were wiped off the map. 25 people removed from the registry. And I wonder, what was their crime? And I wonder, what will be my family's crime? What would they have done? What would my cousins do? What would my uncles and aunts do? What would my grandmother do that necessitates them being gone? It's very hard to come here and explain that humanity, because I shouldn't have to. And I apologize for my tears, but at the same time, it's genuine and it's authentic, because I stay here in this home, this safe place, but my heart and my mind is still there. And as an American, it hurts and kills me to see the fact that I have to explain this, that this isn't just ingrained in us. When I came here, I came because I knew that this would be a new home and a new place and a new environment for me. And I really believe in the freedom that America will bring me, the freedom of speech, the freedom to tell my truth. But it hurts to see the government not even supporting aid. I'm not telling them to do much more than supporting aid. Even that was a stretch. And so that is my piece that I share with you today. And that is the piece of myself and my family and the people of Gaza that I share with you today.
Sam, thank you. Thank you for the clarity by which you speak, and we're all with you. And please don't ever apologize for the
you shouldn't apologize. It's those who are bringing this down on you and your family who should be apologizing. Thank you.
Let's next go. And Bassem will stay with us, so there's an opportunity to hear more. Let's go next to Yusuf. Yusuf, you're, I believe, unmuted.
Yes.
Please.
Good to be with you, everyone. I am from Deir el-Balah. It's central south of Gaza Strip. My family has known no other home but the home on which we live today, my mom and my brother. I haven't spoken to them. Now this is day 2. Last I heard is that 54 people fled from the north, and our guests are our house at the moment. We live next door to an UNRWA school where at least 4,000 people are also taking refuge there. No internet. I have spoken to some folks at Anira. Please stop by my house, make sure everything's okay. It is a difficult thought to take the bet with you at night. I have been through this in 2014, 52-day war, and about 19 days. The only time that I did not speak to my mom for that long was in 2014 when I was a graduate student at Brandeis University studying conflict resolution, which brings me to my point. I was born in Gaza. I watched the Second Intifada, the outbreak of that. I watched the Israeli soldiers attack my home, occupy our home, demolish our farms, and harass my parents in the hope that they would flee their home. My house was right next to their military base. Instead, my dad refused to leave. And not only that, told them I'm going to raise my kids to stay focused on their humanity. And because to us and to him, that would be the ultimate defeat. Ultimately, the army left and the house still exists to this very day. But Israel never relinquished its control of this trip. And so the stories we've been hearing now, and I have been fortunate, like Pisan, to watch from afar, have been happening since 2006, since the day I left when I was 16 years old, when I called myself, I'm going to be, despite being shot by an Israeli soldier in 2004, I'm going to work for peace. I'm going to work towards awareness. I'm going to spend my time educating and spreading awareness about the situation and people in Gaza, because it is in Gaza that I was raised to support and love peace. It is not because I spent 15 years in DC and in Boston. And a lot of the events that I've witnessed today, I've witnessed and I've heard about over and over and over the past 16 years. Meanwhile, as a kid, I clashed with my parents, with my dad. How can you tell me peace when I have to ask for permission in my own home as a teenager to go to the bathroom, to go play outside, etc., etc. But instead, this is how we raised, this is how, that we have to prove a point. Well, I've proved my point many, many times. Yet every summer, every year, every 2 years, every 5 years, I have to wake up and watch it. And you know, the hardest thing for me today, it isn't that I am seeing conflict once again in my home country. It is that I am going through it, not only as a teenager anymore, not as an adult, but today I go through this as a new father. I hold my baby, and I cannot help but wonder about the fathers and the mothers who have to go tonight, no bed, on the floor, and have to console somehow, sum up the courage and the faith and console their babies and tell them that it is going to be okay. How many times I've watched my dad try to do the same thing to keep me and my siblings sane. We must do something. I am going to dedicate every minute of my life moving forward to make sure that this situation does not stand. It cannot stand, and it will not stand.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusuf.
Thank you, Yusuf, for your voice. Next, let's hear from Muhammad.
I'm Palestinian. I came to the United States 1991. I'm a mechanical engineer. I graduated from the Marine Academy, which is belonged to the Arab Leagues. We lived with all the Arabs and we were friends. And I was working in multiple shipping companies, and I decided during the Iraqi war, and I came to the United States. I started my business within 6 days. I was successful, thanks God, alhamdulillah. I have a wife and I have four boys. They are 32, 27, and twins, 14 years old. Granddaughter, I pray to God every day that they will be safe and they will be good human being. I grew up as a baby in a beach camp as a refugee. 1971, our house been destroyed and we moved to a Ramal area. I grew up there. I have a total of 11 brothers and sisters. My dad's side, I have 10 uncles and 2 aunts. My mom, 7 uncles and 2 aunts. Imagine everyone, like almost 1,000 people or less. Every one of them is in the southern side of Gaza. Now, my house has been demolished. I have a house in Gaza that's been demolished completely. I lost at least, between friends, neighbors, related, about 35 people. They are not Hamas. They are not Jihad. They are just poor Palestinian people there. Our policy, and I cannot talk to them, of course. They have no water. They have no electricity. They have no internet. Communication is so hard. You're lucky to have 5 minutes or 5 seconds sometimes. I made a few calls this morning to Gaza, talked to one of my cousins who is the president of the Palestinian Relief Association. And he asked me to ask Mr. Jam because he heard about you. Now he's a doctor. There's a lot of hospital is being attacked. There's a lot of all the hospitals in Gaza is being called and threatened to leave. What happened yesterday in Al Ahli hospital, and I sent the invite to one doctor, his name Dr. Way. He's American. He's been to Gaza multiple times and West Bank, and he did a lot of surgery in Gaza, and I hope he's with us now. But my cousin, Dr. Aed, asked me to ask Mr. Jim and all of you, can you guarantee or can we do something to guarantee that the hospitals will not be attacked or the schools will not be attacked? Can we guarantee that it's going to be a safe refuge to injured people or dead people? That's my message to everyone, from Mr. Biden, President Biden, to his cabinet, to his advisors, to everyone. Everyone is ignoring that amount of people that they want peace, Palestinians for peace. 75 years. My dad from El Masmiya village that's been demolished and is gone completely. He's rich. He's got property. He came to Gaza. He lived in a refugee camp. He said to his kids, I want you to go to school. I want you to be educated. All of us, we got bachelor degree, master degree, PhDs, and still we get killed. We want a future for our kids. I want just to say one thing. If you, yes.
No, I'm it's a very difficult thing to ask you to stop talking, Muhammad, just for a moment. Thank you for everything you've shared. There will be an opportunity to hear more from you, so we're going to come back to you. I just want the rest of our colleagues to chime in, and then we'll come back in. Next, and thank you for what you said, Muhammad. And we will have the opportunity to address the point you're making about schools and hospitals. I want next to go to Lila. I believe Lila is indeed with us and unmuted. Lila, are you here?
I am. Thank you so much for organizing this. I mean, there's so few words, as you know, everyone else has been saying. It's just been exhausting to have to spend the majority of our time justifying why we don't deserve to be killed and why we're human beings. And this really, to me, gets at the heart of the matter. It's kind of the othering of the Palestinians as Arabs, as Muslims, as other, as dispensable, as, you know, barbarians to whom the laws of war don't apply. And to see this kind of play out in real time makes it even more horrific, and is what my family, you know, keeps telling me. So I was born in Kuwait and divided my time between Gaza and the Gulf growing up, and I would spend all my summers and winters there, and all of my mother's and father's side of the family are there, my uncles and cousins, and just like so many people on the group. And they've never lived through more terrifying times, but at the heart of it, as we heard earlier, is the unhumanization of them and their lives and everything they stand for. And really, I just will use my time to share some of what they've shared with me, because I don't know what else to say, you know, when words fail. So we've been exchanging regular, as everyone else, WhatsApp messages, voice notes. You know, it's very important to let them know that they have people who love them and are thinking about them and doing everything they can to amplify their voices when the world has failed them, frankly, and when our government and our tax dollars are killing them. It's the least we can do. So they are doing okay. No one has been killed so far. My cousin's home was destroyed and they all had to move several times. But my family in Gaza decided that they were not going to be moving. They began to go south and then went back when they saw what the situation was like. So I'll just read what he told me in that regard. He said, we tried to flee to the southern part of the strip, my cousin told me in a somber message, but we couldn't even do that. We saw thousands of elderly women and children walking more than 20 miles by foot, just as our grandparents did in 1948. We have decided to stay in Gaza City and die in dignity rather than live through the pain and the humiliation of being forced to leave our homes. We seek your pardon, God. And so that's where they are now. And, you know, they literally, as I was here, sent me a video of the Israelis have been bombing. They're in the Sabra neighborhood of Gaza City, and just all around them. The whole house was shaking. They're with 20 of them, and all the kids are in one hallway right now. I'll just read one more thing that I wrote. Sometimes their updates are frenetic, a cacophonous summary of the night's events I missed when I tried to sleep, and sleep escapes. Time and phone battery are precious commodities. New bombings, closer this time. A tree fell on the house. Our neighbor's house was hit. Our house crumbled. Your neighborhood flattened. Elderly trapped under rubble. Hospital just bombed. The Abadla family, remember them? We may not survive the night. We feel better today. We ran out of water. The toilets don't flush. We need to clean ourselves of the stench of blood and bomb, debris, and broken lives. Then we had cake, don't ask how, a birthday for our 9-year-old. We insist on celebrating life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Layla, very much.
Next, I want to go to, and Layla will still be with us, Muhammad will be with us, Bassem will be with us, we will hear more from you, but next I want to go to Hani. Hani, I believe you've been unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was at a rally, a very important rally here in Washington, D.C., and, you know, usually I like to dress up to those occasions. Heartbreaking stuff. Bisan, you got to me. You know, I know I'm from Gaza. I've heard similar stories and lived similar stories, and it just breaks my heart. July 4th, this summer, I was in Gaza, and my brother Mahmoud looked all over Gaza to find me an American flag because I wanted my girls who were visiting Gaza for the summer to celebrate. And it wasn't for Mahmoud, he wouldn't have found an American flag in Gaza, but he did. Now, when I call Akhuya Mahmoud, he is very scared. He's along with my mother. And, he has a small store. He's not well educated, but he's a great guy and a great chef. And now American bombs is chasing my families. My family in Gaza is not in a good place. And, I'll give you a quick rundown. My mother is in northern Gaza, 71-year-old. She cannot move from wherever she is told safety. Their neighbor, Ahid al-Ajrami, and I have the call recorded. The Israeli military called him and told him move south. And we have this message actually recorded. The next day he moved south like a good boy and he was murdered. This story was published in CNN in case anybody wants to look for reference. And he's not the only one. There's so many stories like that. My sister Naveen is now sheltering at an UNRWA school in Breish camp. And when she had internet, she called me and she said, hey, can you send me $25? I need to buy bread and food. They're running low on supplies. She has 30 other women with her in the room. Breish is in the middle area, and that's supposed to be a safe zone. She is not. I think Al-Maghazi next door, another camp that was bombed. So I don't know if you know, the size of Gaza is about the size of Mesa, Arizona. So you're not talking about a major land here. And, talk to my sister Fatin today. And she's at Kamal Adwan Hospital. She's sheltering inside a small hospital, a children's hospital that's literally 3 minutes walk from her house. Her house got bombed out because the next door folks were bombed out. And it's just heartbreaking, the scene she describes to me. There is even running water is a political statement right now in Gaza. And they don't deserve this. I spend my career here in Washington, D.C., trying to be in the humanitarian line of work, raise money for refugees, for civil rights. I don't recognize America. All of a sudden, the light switched and we became the bad people here. We're being dehumanized in America and we're being vilified over there. And worst part is we're also bombing people from warships, and all of a sudden, all our politicians, they talked about big tent and all that good stuff, all of a sudden frothing in the mouth. And I know that we try to do as much as we can. I was with Jim and Khalil in some meetings, important meetings. We demonstrated outside the house, the White House, just here in Capitol Hill. We make media appearances, we write letters, but it's beginning to feel like it's rigged and there is sinister plan in the works. And what the saddest part for me is the safety of my family is not guaranteed. There are those people here, civilians. They love America and they just love life and they love their kids. And unfortunately, that's not being afforded to them. And worst part is people who are supposed to protect them are running scared for their lives, from UN flag agencies to ambulances to firefighters to journalists. How is the killing of those people weakens Hamas? With that, I leave it with you.
Thank you, Hani. We very much appreciate it. Next, we can hear from Khalil. Khalil, I believe you've been unmuted.
Yes.
Bill, could I just ask, you told the story of your uncle?
Yes.
Share that with us, if you would.
Thank you, Jim. As you know, I find it very difficult to talk about personal matters like you, Jim. We're old timers. We've been at this for almost half a century, and I hate to reveal our age, but at any rate, all Palestinians are my family, okay? And as you know, I spent all my adult career trying to defend Palestinian rights and enhance their cause. And since I came to this country in 1969 as a student. But at any rate, I think it's worth talking about the personal aspect of this conflict because frankly, the coverage doesn't do that. I agree fully with everything that has been said by my brothers and sisters, particularly those from Gaza. Unlike them, I wasn't born in Gaza, but my family hails from Gaza several hundred years ago. And we still have a remnant of the family there. As a matter of fact, the story that Jim wants me to repeat happened in the same neighborhood that my brother from Palestine, from Rimal, was talking about earlier. He lived in Rimal, I'm saying it in past tense, unfortunately, because my uncle Ziad Jahshan, who was born in Gaza and raised in Gaza and probably rarely left Gaza and definitely hasn't left Gaza since occupation. But at any rate, he's an elderly gentleman in his 80s, almost the same age as the president of the United States. And he's rather, has bad health situation, heart issues, and so on. And when Rimal was bombed, as it was mentioned earlier, the building next door to him, I think where he lived, was bombed and hit, and he panicked, and he was asleep. And he jumped out of bed and suffered a heart attack and died as a result of the intensity of the bombing. I mean, this is not like firecrackers, okay? 4th of July. These are huge bombs that knock out half a block at a time. We're talking about 500 kilos. Some of these bombs that are being used, bigger than the ones used in Vietnam, okay? So it's a very serious situation. And not only that, but I was talking to my other cousin, his nephew, actually. His name is Philip. And his brother, Brahim, who still live and still are sitting and with their families and children in Gaza City right now as we speak. The last time we talked, yesterday, Philip was crying on the phone half of the time that we spoke, which lasted few minutes. But he was telling me, Khalil, listen, we're not asking for the moon. We're not asking for the sun. All we're asking for before we die is a little bit of normalcy. Is this too much to ask? As he was hugging his 2 preteen kids, girls, that he is worried about, sitting there shivering with the noise of the voice of the bombings right around them and behind him. My family's church in Gaza, by the way, St. Barphilios, the Greek Orthodox Church. My family, you noticed probably, we're Christians. There are very few Christians left in Gaza. From several thousand few years back, there's only about maybe 800 or 900 at this time living in Gaza. Their church, St. Barphilios Orthodox Church, is just across the street from the hospital that was bombed. And there was some damage to the church building too. And, it's important. I mean, I'm not trying to sound nepotistic just because I have relatives and family there, but this is daily life for these people. And all these people are asking for is a sense of normalcy, which seems to escape or to be too difficult to understand or to absorb by people here in Washington. Jim, as he mentioned, and several of us, Hani and others, yesterday I participated in my 4th meeting, by the way, with the White House and the State Department since Friday. And we're hearing the same thing: lack of sensitivity. Personal sentiments are okay. Some of them are friends, have been friends for many years, but frankly, they are defending a bankrupt, morally and politically bankrupt policy. The president did not help himself with his trip. No wonder it failed before his plane even took off from Andrews. And because his mind and his heart are not in the right place. And he doesn't seem to understand the real issues that our people in Gaza are going through. A friend of mine sent me a poster from New York, a picture, actually, one of those huge signs in New York saying Israel bombs and Biden pays for it. Biden, unfortunately, hasn't paid for it. Yes, Israel has been bombing the hell out of our people in Gaza, but Biden hasn't even started paying. It is you and I, the taxpayers, that are paying for it, both financially and in terms of credibility and dignity. Thank you.
Thanks, Khalil.
Thank you, Khalil. We've talked a lot about Gaza for good reason, but while this is occurring, we also know that the violence in the West Bank and East Jerusalem has continued and escalated. Next, let's hear from Rania. I believe we've unmuted you successfully, Rania.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me and for everything that has been said. And yes, just to repeat what's happening in Gaza is atrocious. But like Maya mentioned, I shouldn't say but, and like Maya mentioned, what's not being discussed as much is the continued abuse and oppression, and they won't call them hostages, they'll call them prisoners, but they're political prisoners and activists that are being imprisoned for literally uttering any words of support for Palestinian people, for people in Gaza. I've spoken to several of my family members who were checking on me just because of the things that I post. I'm not quiet about who I am. I will tell you I'm first generation Palestinian American. I'm visiting my parents in Texas. It feels very difficult to be safe in this home, and then having my cousins back home asking if I'm okay because they're worried for my safety because of the things that I say. But they're asking me these questions because they're terrified. They're terrified that if they open their mouths, they're going to end up being the next round of political prisoners. And I'm sure many of us on this Zoom are very well aware of settler violence. That's not new. It is escalating. Murders by the IDF, I do the defense in print and in quotation marks always, are escalating. I believe, I know the numbers are very hard to track because everything is happening. There's so much happening so quickly, but as recently as I think of 3 or 4 days ago, the number of kids that were killed in the West Bank in just the last, less than 2 weeks was 16, and that's just the children. And again, just zero. It's been said over and over again, but it's always worth repeating. No value for the lives of Palestinian people. Every excuse under the sun. Everybody wants to say Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. And the thing that I keep saying to people who I work with and I just thought, had more brain cells to rub together, when they make these excuses, and then I say to them, okay, tell me what Hamas has to do with the West Bank. Nothing. It turns into the whataboutism. It turns into all the excuses and everything except for humanizing and admitting that Palestinians, we are human beings, and why the hell do we have to justify our existence? I don't understand. It's painful. I'm a political consultant. I'm a strategist. This is what I do for a living. And these people that I helped get elected, quite frankly, I am so deeply, deeply, deeply disappointed and angry. And I'm getting calls asking, what are you going to do about this election cycle? I know that's not what we're talking about here, but I don't know, because what is happening is so disgusting and so atrocious, and being, just like Khalid said, is being paid for by our tax dollars, billions and billions of dollars, and it's just going to be more on top of that, to literally oppress, occupy, abuse, commit genocide against an entire population of people, co-signed by the United States of America and, of course, other European countries as well. But literally being excused, and the hypocrisy is lost on so many people. And again, so when I talk about these children, and it's not just children, of course, being murdered in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, it's not, but I think no matter who you are, you can, somewhere in our hearts, no matter who the child is, we can find some feeling for them. So I apologize, I keep bringing them up, but it is mind-blowing to me how easily people who consider themselves allies in every other way, in every other place, in every other to every other group of people, can so easily turn away and ignore and make excuses for the atrocities that are happening again and continuing to happen in the West Bank and across the country. Quite frankly, none of this is new, as most people here know. And another thing I keep reminding people is, again, Hamas is the excuse. They've existed since 1987 with the help of Israel and the United States. They were in power in 2006. Again, have nothing to do with the West Bank, but those abuses and atrocities continue to be carried out. There continue to be these political prisoners with exactly zero rights for showing up to a peaceful protest, for daring to speak out, and those things just continue to happen. And again, unfortunately, with our support and dollars, our being the United States, not our literal support here.
Thank you, Rania.
Thanks, Rania. We lastly, but surely not, we will hear from Omar, who is, I believe, unmuted. Omar has been working nonstop since it started, specifically to attempt to break through the media narrative piece. So Omar, if we can hear from you.
Thank you, Maya. Honestly, it's been infuriating hearing from everyone and infuriating watching what's happening on the ground. And what makes it all the more aggravating is the extent to which not just the American government, but American media outlets have been complicit in the dehumanization of Palestinians that we are witnessing. The clock started in the media the moment there were Israeli victims of Hamas violence. Before the Hamas horrendous attack, there were 250 Palestinians who were killed in the West Bank. There were no stories about them in mainstream media, no interviews with their parents, no words about the kind of people they were and who they might have been, and you know, the grief that families are going through. And yet, the second this happened, you instantly have this deep, meaningful conversation happening between Israeli families of the victims and American news anchors, where it's a back and forth in a way that even when Palestinian American or Arab American voices break into this news cycle, it just doesn't feel like an authentic conversation. You get on and they hear what you have to say and they stare at you as if they're just ready for you to be done through your talking points so they can thank you for being on and moving on. It's not a real, genuine conversation. And that contrast, I think, is really self-evident. And you see it with a comparison with what happened in Ukraine and what's happening in Gaza right now. During the entire first year of Russia's bombing of Ukraine, they've killed 487 children in the course of a year. And in the first 7 days of Israel's onslaught on Gaza this week, they've killed 724 children in a period of a week. They've killed more children in Gaza in 1 week than Russia has killed in Ukraine in an entire year. You do the math on it, it's a rate of killing children of 100 to 1. And yet, you don't see the images playing on a loop the way we've seen with Ukraine. You don't see, there seems to be just fundamentally less value for Palestinian life, as if our lives don't matter. And it's really a deep problem about the extent to which the news media also seems to be willing to take Israel's word for absolutely everything. You know, you have a very thoroughly documented record of human rights organizations pointing out that Israel has engaged in reckless and indiscriminate bombing of civilian areas, of the fact that they have targeted civilians for killing. We've seen how the Israeli government lied about the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, the Palestinian American journalist. Their initial reaction was to say Palestinian gunmen did it. And when that was proven to be a lie, they said, oh, she was caught in crossfire. And then we found out there was no crossfire. And it's just, this is a very lengthy pattern of the Israeli government lying over and over again to avoid responsibility for its own crimes, when Israeli soldiers, through groups like Breaking the Silence, have come forward to admit to some of these war crimes. And this constant, instant reaction by the media to just trust that the Israeli government is doing absolutely everything it can to avoid civilians, and this dehumanization of Palestinians, that you can constantly blame them for their own deaths, is honestly, it's hard to find the words to describe it, and the absolute necessity of actually breaking through that. The media in this country needs a very, very deep lesson on the history of this issue, on the details of it, and on the Israeli government's approach. They simply don't have adequate context. They don't have an adequate understanding of the human rights record at play. And there isn't an understanding that there is no military solution to this violence. The fact that we've been on this path over and over again and expecting a different result, there is no challenge for that. There is no understanding of the fact that we ultimately cannot solve this problem until Palestinians are recognized as equal human beings who are deserving of the same dignity and decency and respect and freedom that Israelis are currently enjoying. If we don't have that, we're not going anywhere. And yet all we see is amplification of the Israeli government's narrative that's going to keep us stuck in the cycle of violence for a very, very long time.
We're getting close on time, but I want to do one thing with everybody who spoke. I want to ask them if they had one sentence to say to Joe Biden, what would that one sentence be? What message would you want to leave with him at this point? And Khalil, I'm going to start with you because you've been doing this a long time and you probably can sum it up in one quick sentence. I may let you go to two, but I want to get everybody in. Khalil, you want to start? If you're speechless, I understand that too.
I would tell him basically act as a president and stop the fighting immediately.
Layla, what could you say? Oh, you're muted.
Because literally we have no more words to say. I would say stop enabling Israeli war crimes, stop killing Palestinian children with our tax dollars, and address the core root of the problem, Palestinians' denial of their freedom and theft of their land.
Thanks. Rania. Can you unmute her? Yeah, Rania. She's muted.
No, they just unmuted. Well, I really want to say, I won't say here, there includes expletives. Jim knows how much I like curse words, but I think what I would then follow up with is history is going to judge you, and you're funding apartheid and you're funding genocide, and the blood of so many human beings are on your hands. That's what I would want to say to him.
Thank you. Yusuf? Can we unmute?
I would say to end the violence now, ceasefire now, and to look at the Palestinians, find the courage to see their humanity and see how they also struggle daily, and to recognize that daily ongoing suffering. Otherwise, next time, please, whatever you do, do not quote the Quran. Thank you.
Mohammed.
It's going to be more than 12 sentences. Number one, hospitals, people, they need water, they need medicine, they need everything. Open it immediately. Stop killing or sharing the crime with Israel. Number two, Palestinians' life matters like everyone else. Number three, we understand election. We understand this year. But remember, there's 4 million Arabs. Count on them if you want to do something. If you are not doing anything, you're losing all of them. Nothing else, Mr. Biden. You need to open your eyes and heart. You're always saying my heart. Where is your heart?
Omar. Thank you.
Jim, before I turn it over to you,
I wanted to go to Omar and Besson.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would say to President Biden, if you don't have the political courage to challenge Israeli apartheid altogether, at least have the decency and humanity to call for an immediate ceasefire and put an end to this onslaught right now.
Thanks. Besson?
We are meant to be the leaders of the free world, and that means freedom for everyone, not just those that further our political interests.
I wanted to take, before we turn it over to you, Jim, Yusuf, I know that you were working on getting your mom and your brother out. And Muhammad, I know you were working on getting your brother out. I think it'd be helpful for people to just hear specifically about the attempt to get your families out.
Start me?
Quickly, yes, please.
We never succeeded because I've been there in 2006. Took me 12 days to leave Gaza. My brother is same thing. We are number 3 or class 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. There's people dying on the borders in Rafah. No one cares. No one cares. Even the people in Rafah, they have no money and they have no food and everything. I'm giving up on that idea of a freedom in United States of America the way it runs in the last 7 years or 6 years. It's got to stop.
Yusuf?
First of all, I cannot believe that after everything my family did to preserve our home and our land and to protect us from becoming refugees due to these failed policies and aggressions and unfairness toward the Palestinian people, that today in 2023, my family, after such a long time, is also again under the threat of being refugees. I cannot fathom that this happened to me over the past seven days. And I can even begin to fathom, even though I'm Palestinian, to understand what it is like to live all your life as a refugee. It's just unacceptable. I've turned their names in. They're not citizens. I am. So even if they get, the word is, even if we manage to get people out, it's going to be US citizens. Then it's going to be green card holders. Then it's going to be people with visas. Then perhaps immediate relative family members. So at this point, 7 days in, after such amount of destruction and how the amount of people that died and were killed, nobody's talking about leaving. I just want to hear from them, and we'll take it from there. But quite frankly, I don't think anyone will be allowed to leave in time. It's too late.
Thank you, Yusuf, and thank you to everybody who joined us to share their individual family perspectives. It's very, very hard for all of us right now, but especially for you all to take the time to share those personal stories. Jim, I want to turn it over to you to close us out. And thank you.
Thanks, Maya, and thank you all of you for sharing the stories that you did. They're important for one critical reason. Palestinians aren't seen as human beings, and as ridiculous as it may seem, to remind people of our humanity presents Israel with the biggest challenge of all, because they've spent a century denying that humanity. I wrote a book back in '78, which we republished recently, called Palestinians, the Invisible Victims. And there are lines in there that Zionism used in the early years to describe the conflict between civilization and barbarism, between a people themselves who they claimed were more intelligent than the average person in the West, facing people in the East who are less intelligent than average people, the forces of lightness versus the forces of darkness. And that over an accumulation of decades created a mindset in the West that listened to that and said, these are real people like us. I mean, they were the colonizers on the frontier confronting the savages. It was like cowboys versus the Indians. Palestinians were the Indians, and Israelis just wanted to be free. The film The Exodus told that story. And it created a mindset. Israelis were the people. Palestinians were a problem. If we recognized at all, it was because they were a problem, like trees that had to be removed on the frontier. The story stuck, the idea stuck, and it shaped the narrative. The equation in America became, what do we do to protect Israeli humanity by solving the problem or dealing with the problem or getting rid of the problem? It was never, how do we deal with Israeli humanity and Palestinian humanity? And by denying the humanity of an entire people, we laid the groundwork for this genocide. For God's sake, even the food's not ours, right? It's Trader Joe's Mediterranean-inspired kibbeh balls, or it's Israeli hummus, or it's Israeli this, or I mean, they took the land, they took the culture, and they denied the humanity of the people. And so reminding people of the humanity is critical. I saw Joe Biden there today at the press conference, and I'm glad we have a president who can express compassion for people who've lost their lives. Not an ounce, not even a recognition of the suffering of what's going on in Gaza or in the West Bank, or that's traumatizing Palestinians all over the world. Two narratives. Israelis have a narrative of the Holocaust, and when they saw the barbaric massacres created by Hamas on October 7th, it fueled that narrative. And it said, we're vulnerable still. We still have to be afraid. And look at what they just did. There's also the Palestinian narrative. And when they see the maps of Gaza being cut in half, and the Israeli foreign minister saying today, when this is over, there'll be Gaza will be smaller and have less people. It reminds them of Ben Gurion saying after the 48 war, we got a double miracle. We got more land and less Arabs, which was the plan to begin with. And so the narrative of the Nakba is also real. And the trauma of Palestinians is real. But I dare say the president doesn't even know about it. The American media doesn't even think about it. American policymakers don't even care about it. And so we should not have to be in the position of affirming our humanity, but we have to, because it's ignored. And so I thank you for telling your stories, and we'll try to create more opportunities. There were a number of press people here. I hope that they contact you or us and want to hear from you directly. So critical. Thank you, Maya, for helping. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your stories. And we're not done. We're not done. Unfortunately, I've been doing this since I started the Palestine Human Rights Campaign in the 70s. Sometimes I think we don't make any progress, but I think we're changing hearts and minds, at least among some. And that's maybe all we can do, is just continue to grow this movement. We'll get a new president someday. We'll get a new Congress someday. We've got really good progressives running for office, and we've got a whole generation of young people who they are trying to silence on college campuses. And yet their voices aren't being silenced, and they continue to speak. Thank you very much. And we'll be back next week with another Coffee and Column. Maya, you want to?
I do. I just want to ask folks to please check the chat that contains an action alert on Gaza. If you can take a few moments to complete that, share it with colleagues and families and friends. It is literally the least that we can do. But thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We'll put this together in a video and share additional resources that were shared during the session. Thanks again.
Daniel Berrigan used to say, Daniel Berrigan, who's a mentor of mine, used to say that you've reached a level of insanity when you have to argue that 2 + 2 is 4. And that's where we are. I mean, to have to argue a ceasefire because the State Department removed and ordered no one in the diplomatic corps to talk about a ceasefire. How crazy can that be? When we have to talk about Palestinian humanity because it's being denied or ignored, how crazy is that? We're in a world where you have to, it's the brave thing to say 2 + 2 is 4. We just got to keep saying it and keep saying it until people say, why didn't we think of that before? And I appreciate your courage coming forward, and Khalil in particular for the decades of work we've done together on this stuff. Thank you so much. And Omar, you were a great colleague, and you still are, and I appreciate it. And Yusuf and Layla and Basan and Muhammad and Hani, who's not with us, and Rania, who continues to be just great. Thank you so much for everything you do. See you next week on Coffee and Column. Bye-bye.